Indian, and also Vietnamese. And while Asian Americans make up a little over 5% of the U.S. population, there are some underrepresented ones, especially at the highest level of the U.S. government. There is only one Chinese American, by the way, in the United States Congress, and there have been two in the United States Senate. Both were from Hawaii. Emily Drew takes a look at one Chinese American leader looking to engage more Asian Americans in government.
Self-promotion and being able to market yourself are things that Asian Americans don't generally like to do.
Christopher Chan says cultural differences keep many Asian Americans out of U.S. politics.
I think we're very underrepresented right now.
He wants to change that. Chris was born in Ohio to parents from Hong Kong. He went to Duke University, then to law school. Today at 33, he's an intellectual property lawyer in Washington, D.C., shooting for partner in a firm where few Asians have broken what he calls the bamboo ceiling.
I think a lot of Asian Americans have that problem with being viewed as not true leaders.
Chris has already overcome that stereotype. He's president of the Asian Pacific American Bar Association in Washington, and he's a commissioner in the mayor's office on Asian and Pacific Islander affairs.
Part of it is, one, being at the table. The other is adding another viewpoint, adding that cultural or diverse viewpoint.
He believes Asian Americans are on the rise in U.S. politics.
My parents and my parents' generation weren't really as involved in just civics. It was more focused on how do we get our children educated, how do we get our children to be doctors, lawyers, or whatever they want to be.
But he says Asian Americans can still do more today to develop the skills they need to be effective in U.S. civil society.
Showing that you can organize a community, showing that you can fundraise, show that you can give a speech in front of people and inspire other people.
It's this grassroots experience that can prepare community leaders for higher levels of politics.
It's important to have the American government be reflective of what American society is. And if Asian Americans represent 5% of the population, we should at least be at 5% of the government.
Chris says he has no ambitions to run for public office, but many community leaders have made the switch, Mitt Romney and Barack Obama among them. Emily Drew, CCTV.
The Asian vote is a big one, both parties courting both the Asian vote and the Asian money. Mike?
All right, Phillip, and since we last saw you, of course, Missouri has now ended up in the Romney column and Minnesota going for Barack Obama. More polls set to close shortly. We'll continue our coverage in just a bit. And we're ready to make some more projections. California, 55 electoral votes. Let's go back over here to the other, let me go to this right there, 55 electoral votes. That one will go to Barack Obama, if I can get this thing to work right. There we go. There we go. How's that? So 55 going to Barack Obama. Washington State also going to Barack Obama. And I believe, was it Hawaii was the other one that were, yeah, in Hawaii with 4 electoral votes. There they are for you. And Idaho, which has a large Mormon population and 4 electoral votes, that one goes red. And you see the figures. Barack Obama now out in front with 244 electoral votes and Mitt Romney with 188. Let's check in with Jessica Stone. And she is in Illinois, where they must be delighted.
Oh my goodness, we had just a wave, 3 waves of roars from this crowd tonight as they heard that California, Hawaii, and Washington, according to CNN's projections, were called for the president. Of course, the president, a native son of Hawaii. There is tremendous support for him in this room as those results were read. The president has moved from his home now to the Fairmont Hotel, where he is thanking supporters, senior staff, fundraisers, people who have helped him raise millions and millions of dollars for this campaign. And the next and final stop will be here at the campaign headquarters, where he will address all of these supporters. His wife, his children are with him, his mother-in-law, as they're going through and thanking everyone. He has so far been watching the returns at home and just now emerging in the last 15 minutes. The party here getting a little bit more escalated too. We've had an opening prayer and the national anthem. It looks like we've got a call now behind us. I'm sure we'll be reaching that projection ourselves in a little bit of time. There's also been a lot of cheers here when the Virginia Senate race was called for the Democrat. That's a state, of course, that the president has really cultivated, sending Vice President Biden there on Monday to 2 separate cities, and it's a state that will really seal the deal for the president to get another 4-year term.
All right, Jessica, it's pretty loud there. There's no doubt about that. Jessica's still live for us in Chicago, Illinois. Let's check in with Sean Caleb's, where I suspect the mood is going to be a lot more subdued. Huh, Sean?
Yeah, Mike, it is much more muted here, but I have to tell you, I think that the faithful you see behind me, all dressed in dark suits and elegant dresses, they are ready for a celebration, and every time some hint of positive news comes up on the large screens behind me, there is somewhat of a cheer here, but without question, you can see behind me basically the mood of the crowd gathered here. This really belies what has played out the past number of days. Mitt Romney really hitting the campaign trail extremely hard over this past week, feeling he was riding a wave of momentum in to this evening. In fact, at some points, even predicting that he would win more than 300 electoral votes. Well, clearly, that is not going to happen right now. And the paths that could take Mitt Romney to the White House are beginning to at least be extinguished to a degree. He really needs to win Ohio, needs to win Florida, needs to win Virginia. Those are the 3 biggies that people are going to be holding their breath for here. Romney got off his campaign plane just a couple of hours ago, really breaking from tradition. Traditionally, presidential candidates kind of sequester themselves the day the votes come in and spend an anxious day watching them roll in. Well, Romney hit the campaign trail, and when he did get off, he was somewhat emotional, talking about the long trip it has been, and he thanked all of those who have been with him and supported him.
You know, I'm very proud of the campaign that we've run, to tell you the truth. No campaign is perfect. I'm sure, like any campaign, people can point to mistakes, but that's going to be part of anything that's produced by human beings. But our team has been very solid.
Well, the news from here is pretty much what you're seeing playing out behind me. The authorities the people keep waiting for some positive news to come out on those screens behind me, but the next hour and a half going to be incredibly difficult. Mike, they're really pointing toward Florida. They think that the turnout in Miami-Dade County, a traditional stronghold of Democrats, is going to be down. They're counting on that, and they're certainly counting on Virginia, where Romney and Ryan have done a great deal of campaigning. As you know, this is an election where people domestically are looking at the economy, but really internationally, a lot of everybody should be interested in what goes on. There is a tremendous difference between the policies of Barack Obama and the policies that Mitt Romney would do as well. And so everything from Iran, its effort to enhance its nuclear program, to illegal immigration or immigration at any kind in the United States. And of course, Romney's also indicated that label China a currency manipulator when he takes office. So a lot at stake here. We'll be here throughout the evening, Mike. Back to you.
All right, Sean Caleb's live for us in Boston, Massachusetts. You're looking at the latest returns, and once again, we're saying it's too early to call in Florida. Right now, Barack Obama holding on to a very slight lead over former Governor Mitt Romney, 50 to 49%. Of course, this one critical, 29 electoral votes there. Ohio, 18. The map is starting to shrink, isn't it?
I got to show you something. You have Barack Obama with 243, right? 250, 256, 265, 271. He doesn't have to win either Ohio or Florida or Virginia to win the election. He simply has to win Oregon,
Nevada,
which he's certainly going to win. You just called Nevada, Colorado, and Iowa, and then it doesn't even matter what happens in Ohio and Florida.
And this is what we had talked about earlier. There are several paths to victory for Barack Obama. Right now, the path for Mitt Romney, very slim, isn't it?
He's got to win. He's got to just about run the table.
So it's tough, but right now it looks like Virginia, you feel strongly, might go in Mitt Romney's direction.
It could. Virginia is touch and go. I still don't see how Ohio goes for Romney. I have a lot of trouble seeing how Iowa goes for Romney. Colorado right now is leaning Obama, but it's too early to tell. But in essence, Romney has to run the table. Because he's not going to win Oregon.
We're going to put that back to yellow. Let's talk a little bit about Colorado. Maybe we can have the fly-in of the state of Colorado. Colorado is an interesting state this year because a lot of times you look at split tickets and that sort of thing. There's a ballot initiative on the ballot in Colorado dealing with medical, or not medical, but actual marijuana being legal, and you have to suspect that a lot of liberal voters will come out. Is that going to help Barack Obama?
We'll bring out all those aging hippies, you know, who still remember the 1970s, who are certainly going to vote for Barack Obama. You know, sometimes these ballot initiatives helps. You know, we know that same-sex marriage initiatives on the ballot have helped Republicans, and certainly, while I'm not going to say that Democrats blow dope more than Republicans, they tend to be more liberal on these social issues.
We see in 2008 where he won it. Bush won it in 2004. Colorado, a big state. We're going to check in with Craig Mauro. Of course, Ohio, a huge state for Governor Mitt Romney, and that one's still up in the air at this time.
That's right, Mike, although it does appear to be tightening here, and this is what people thought would happen all along, is that this state would be very, very tight, the race here between Obama and Romney. The latest numbers that I have, with 70% of precincts reporting in the state, is that Obama is getting about 49.5% of the votes and Romney 48.8%. Now that difference between the two has shrunk a lot since the night began. I am told also that some of the counties here in Ohio, because it really breaks down to counties. This is a very diverse state that has very Democratic-leaning areas and then very conservative Republican-leaning areas. And I've been told that some of the more conservative counties, which are in the southwest part of the state, which is where I am, outside of the city of Cincinnati, some of those big Republican counties, most of their precincts have been reported, and you see that Obama is still hanging on to that lead. Considering that there are still a couple of big counties left that still have about half, 50 to 40% of their precincts to report. One is Cuyahoga, which is in the city of Cleveland, the county around that city, which is in the northeast part of the state and is heavily Democratic, and Franklin County, which is Columbus, the capital, another urban area that tends to lean Democratic. Those still have a lot of reporting left to do.
All right, Craig Mauro in Ohio. Let's take a look at our fly-in of the state of Iowa, because this is another critical state. And when we looked at all these yellow states earlier in the evening, well, there is Iowa. 6 electoral votes, and guess who they're going to go to? They are going to go to the man who won it in 2008. This one we are declaring for Barack Obama. He won it by almost 10 percentage points in 2008. As we said before, these are swing states. It went to Bush in 2004, but the 6 electoral votes go to Barack Obama tonight. So Barack Obama winning in Iowa. So as we said, this map shrinking as the evening progresses. There are a lot less yellow states and only really one path to victory for Mitt Romney at this stage. So President Obama has to feel very good. We'll click on this one and turn this one blue. So you could start to see the map coming together. Nevada, Colorado, and Ohio, Virginia, and Florida. Very important states at this point. Let's go to Elaine now.
Mike, I know you cannot hear me here, but again, wanted to remind everyone that we're outside the north portico of the White House, and within the last few minutes, we've heard a crowd of people cheering and chanting USA, USA, USA. So as these numbers keep coming in, there seems to be some sort of a crowd growing in front of the White House. But let's turn to the battleground states of Nevada, Virginia, and North Carolina, where the growing Asian American population rather, has the potential to really make a difference. 1 in 3 Asian American voters was undecided in this year's presidential election, which made them one of the most significant voting blocs during this campaign. And as Yakenda McGahee reports, there has been a big push to get the Asian vote out.
Okay, I think we only have 2 weeks left, guys. Let's do it.
In Southern California, volunteers are moving at a frenetic pace, all in hopes of capturing those critical last-minute votes in a presidential race where ethnicity and race do matter.
Yes, because there's so many Asians in the state, and the numbers are increasing pretty rapidly. It will be a force to be considered.
Asian Americans are the fastest growing immigrant group in the United States, 18 million strong. A third of them live here in Southern California. According to a study at the University of California, this expanding population remains the most overlooked and under-engaged by the 2 major political parties.
How come you don't vote? Don't get involved in politics.
Which is why 13 community-based groups joined forces and launched an unprecedented effort
November 6th election
to get out the Asian vote.
Even these little buttons that we had made, people got so excited. All it says is vote in Punjabi, and people were ecstatic. Very simple.
Very simple, but simply put, very necessary. The idea behind these voting kits distributed with bracelets and buttons, T-shirts and stickers is to both engage and educate voters in their native tongue. Turns out some state election officials are doing the same. 10 different states, including California, are providing multilingual voting ballots in, among others, Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, and Vietnamese. And as of this year, the state of California has added both Thai and Hindi.
But that actually still doesn't cover a majority of our community. The language is Punjabi. And so we've been working on in-language dialogues.
Because they know access to political power requires constant engagement in political activity. Yukenda McGahee, CCTV, Los Angeles.
The U.S. and China have a relationship, a cooperation and competition. We'll get back to that in just a minute, but first let's check in with Mike Walter, who has more results.
Elaine, NBC News is projecting that Barack Obama has won re-election. They now have him over the top at 274 electoral votes, and so Barack Obama will remain in office for a second term, winning tonight. And hopefully we can go to Jessica and get reaction in Chicago, Illinois. Once again, the winner, Barack Obama, this by NBC. NBC making this projection. And let's see if we can check in with Jessica where they have to be ecstatic right now. Jessica, give us the feel.
Yes, let me just show you, step away and show you this crowd. They have just gone electric as that announcement was made here. We have lots of cameras going off, arms waving, a very young crowd here tonight. These are all, again, supporters, people that have worked hard on the campaign, people that have been invested since the president became president, and sometimes before then, they are pumped.
Well, Jessica, about 4 years ago, we remember how thunderous the applause was at that time. This was a freshman senator from Illinois talking about hope and change 4 years ago, hoping there wouldn't be any change, that he would remain in office, and that is the case as he wins here tonight. 274 electoral votes at this stage.
That's right, Mike. It's a far cry from Grant Park, but this is no less an excited crowd, to be sure. And now all they're waiting for is for the president to speak tonight, to tell them what the next 4 years are going to be about, and to thank them for all of their help.
And Jessica, as you mentioned earlier today, the president pretty relaxed, played a game of basketball. This is a tradition with him, isn't it?
It is, and it appears to have brought him good luck. You know, the only time he didn't do it, he lost in the state of New Hampshire, so he was definitely going to stick with tradition today, and he did so. He played a good game of basketball. Incidentally, he won. His team won, and now a much bigger win for the president as he wins re-election of as the president of the United States.
And Jessica, another point is the organization of the campaign. They had such a great ground game 4 years ago. It looks as though they improved it even more this year. And one of the things that was really interesting is we saw Mitt Romney going to Pennsylvania in the waning days of this campaign, but I heard from so many strategists that he really didn't have the ground game to compete, and that really is key, isn't it?
It certainly is, and you know, the state of Pennsylvania has a pretty long track record, with the exception of George H.W. Bush's election, of going blue, of voting for Democrats, and we saw Mitt Romney's campaign go there only really in the last 5 or 6 days to try to find another path to the White House. Clearly they were unable to do it. Clearly the president winning big in many of these states, as you say, with his ground game, more than 100 offices on the ground in places like Ohio and Virginia. Just a really aggressive ground game, and also a very aggressive social media strategy. As I said earlier, I got about 5 or 6 reminders to vote from the campaign today and to encourage other people to vote, and I know that that same strategy was employed with anybody else who signed up for the app. Much of the youth vote, as we'll see, I think has turned out for this president and turned out big, and certainly a very well-orchestrated campaign, and I think we'll be seeing as the numbers come in on how the breakdown came, that they did a really good job turning out the vote, which is essentially the key for Democrats to win re-election, and certainly what the president appears to have done tonight.
Well, you're having a tough time competing with that crowd. So we are going to break away for just a moment and go to Ohio, which is the difference in this campaign. Craig Mauro in Cincinnati.
Well, Mike, it looks like President Obama's strategy here has paid off. Now, this state is a swing state, and it's heavily Democratic in some areas and heavily Republican in other areas, and both campaigns brought their biggest and best game here in terms of in terms of ad spending and advertising, in terms of their strategies and rallies and events. Now, the Democratic part of this state is for the most part in the northern strip, which is a heavily industrialized area. There's a lot of manufacturing there, and it's very heavily dependent on the auto industry. It's right across the border from Detroit and Michigan. There are a lot of auto plants, auto factories there, and the Obama campaign started advertising in this state early and attacking Republican candidate Mitt Romney for his stance on the automobile bailout back in 2009, which the Obama administration orchestrated. Romney famously wrote in an op-ed in the New York Times, "Let Detroit go bankrupt." He argued that it should be a privately structured bankruptcy process, and the Obama campaign pounced on that, and it appears to have paid off with his base. The unionized working class vote in northern Ohio appears to have carried this state for him.
Well, let's soak in some of the celebration in Illinois. Let's listen in. Well, there you go, listening to the Beatles, as they say, lose your mind, and they are undoubtedly doing that. Let's check in with Jessica Stone. Describe what it's like there for us, if you will, Jess.
Well, there's a lot of twisting and shouting going on here. Lots of shouting, as you can hear. Just so much excitement, and to my left, we're even seeing people flooding in here, getting ready for the president's speech. We know that he's still at the Fairmont Hotel, thanking all of the people who made this possible. In probably just a matter of moments, we'll be hearing from him here as he personally thanks all of these people. But this is just such an elated crowd. And again, you know, the people have really dressed up for this occasion. We've seen sequins, we've seen flags. There is a whole riser to my right where people are waving their flags and dancing around. Just an utter sense of abandonment as people just really enjoy themselves with this victory, feeling very much a part of it, Mike.
All right, let's take a look at an interesting feature of the elections here in the United States. Actually, it looks as though Mitt Romney will pull off the popular vote. He's ahead at 50% over Barack Obama at this stage in the campaign, with 56% of the precincts reporting at this stage Mitt Romney in the lead with 50% of the vote. Let's check in with Sean in Boston.
Yeah, without question, Mike, it was a kick in the gut when the Ohio numbers came out here in Boston. Audible groan went up. In the ensuing 10, 15 minutes or so, we've seen a lot of hugging. I've seen a few tears off to my right, but mostly people are just staring at the big screen, hoping that what they're seeing is simply not accurate. But it is incredibly clear and incredibly true at this hour. Basically, what happens the rest of the evening here is all atmospheric. It has been called. Barack Obama is going to have 4 more years. We have heard some very public grumbling from a lot of conservative analysts about the information you just talked about, Mike. If indeed Mitt Romney does win the popular vote, saying, maybe this isn't the best way to elect a president, but, those people should think back to 2000 when Al Gore won the popular vote, and of course everybody knows now George W. Bush became the president. There was a very, very narrow window for Mitt Romney after he lost the states of Pennsylvania and Michigan. These are states that he had hoped to win. He had been very, very confident coming in here, saying that he thought he could get as many as 315 electoral votes, but the night's over. All we are doing is waiting for Mitt Romney to come out now. This crowd is just stunned, shocked, just looking around. It is quiet here considering how many people are here. They came for a celebration and they're going to go home very disappointed. Mike?
Sean, stick with us. We want to take some more pictures of Chicago, but I want to talk to you about that confidence that Mitt Romney was demonstrating earlier today. He had said he'd only worked on one speech, which was his victory speech. Obviously, he's going to have to cobble together a concession speech tonight.
Yeah, we did hear that, and we'll see how he flies off the cuff, because he was confident. Said he had about, 1,114-word speech to bring to his faithful here when he became the 45th president of the United States, but he is going to leave as perhaps an afterthought in the 2012. We'll see how history writes this one. It was not the nail biter that people thought. It is close, but this isn't one that's going to go into the wee hours, that's going to be contested, that's going to drag on and on and on. We've heard some conservative analysts say that Barack Obama did not receive a strong mandate from voters, but I think that the president is going to move forward believing he did get that mandate he wanted. It's interesting, Mike, because Romney did go after independents, and he won that group rather handily, but fell short in virtually every other category. Obama's faithful were able to get their people to the polls, and we all know, really, it comes down to the grassroots support. Who has the better organization? Who will get the people out to the polls? Very, very disappointing night for the people here. Looking around me, the crowd is thinning out. We are going to, of course, wait and hear what the former Massachusetts governor has to say about a long, very hard-fought campaign, a very expensive campaign, but he is going to go home the loser tonight.
Once again, the race to 270 over. President Barack Obama winning re-election. Let's check back in with Jessica Stone, who is in Chicago at the Obama headquarters.
And Mike, we are looking at the crowd as it continues to grow in anticipation of the president coming and speaking to everybody. We know that the vice president has been making calls, presumably thank you calls to Democratic senators, governors, and candidates, and also congratulatory calls. We expect that both of them will be coming here tonight to essentially say thank you, and we're ready to start again for another 4-year term. But just a really sense of anticipation here, and more and more people just flooding in.
Jessica, hold on for just a second. We want to take a shot of the White House now live and listen in to what people are saying there. Listen in. The folks have been chanting 4 more years. Elaine, overlooking the White House, what's the look there?
You know, it's just gotten progressively louder, Mike, in the last 20 minutes or so since the word broke that President Barack Obama has won re-election. The crowd is growing. People on the streets are honking. They're driving by honking, and they're screaming 4 more years, yes we can, which was one of Barack Obama's past campaign slogans, and 4 more years. So just a very, very excited crowd. You know, they did this in 2008 when he won re-election. People just ran to the White House to celebrate, and I anticipate the same thing will happen again. So the crowd, you can't see them behind me, but we can certainly hear them, and again, as we said, it's just getting louder and louder. I know you're looking at video there, but from my vantage point, it is just getting louder. The party is just growing.
And Elaine, how early did they start streaming over there to the White House?
Just around 11 o'clock. You know, it started with a few folks, I think, were just kind of hanging out. And just within the last 20-30 minutes, it's just getting louder, and we see people just running over there. So this kind of seems to be the place in D.C. Where people run to. We noticed on the way over here that there were viewing parties, so maybe they left the viewing parties and ran straight over to the White House.
Well, it's nice and chilly out there, but they're staying fired up. There's no doubt about it. Let's go back to Chicago and Jessica Stone.
That's right. It appears that the polls were right all along. We were seeing the president edging out Mitt Romney in most of these swing states, if not tied, and especially in a state like Ohio, where he was running at least 3 points ahead. The president having a strong showing tonight, and the people here are just so excited, so electric. The president really running a campaign that in many ways I think surprised people, in the sense that it was supposed to be a very close election. We expected there to be contested votes in places like Florida and Ohio. And with these projections, what we're seeing is that it's a much more decisive victory than perhaps we had thought it might be. And that's going to be really important for the president as he goes forward and tries to govern. It's really important that it's a decisive victory for him as he goes forward, as he will return to a Washington with a divided Congress and a lot of tough problems ahead.
All right, Jessica Stone live in Chicago, Illinois for us, and we'll be checking back with her periodically. Of course, we're all waiting for Barack Obama to come out and speak, but right now we're going to listen into the crowds. Let's check in with Nina Donahue. She's up on Capitol Hill. Nina, any sense that this will help to break some of the gridlock on Capitol Hill? I know the Democrats did very well in the Senate races this evening, didn't they?
That's a very good question, Mike. It really, at this stage, it looks like the status quo is going to remain the same here on Capitol Hill. The Democrats look set at this hour to be maintaining their hold on the upper house. That's the Senate victories for the Democrats, Senate and the Senate races in Virginia and in Ohio. Obviously waiting for a few more races to come in, but also in the lower house, that's the House of Representatives, it really looks like the Republicans are going to maintain their hold. They've held on to that house since 2010. They've made it very difficult for President Obama and his party to pass certain legislation. Let's just take a quick look back over the gridlock of the past couple of years.
All right, let's look at the numbers from Ohio, and it has been called in favor of Barack Obama. This is the one that put him over the top. He gets 50% of the vote to Mitt Romney's 49%. And again, this was a critical state in 2004. It came down to the wire there as well, and John Kerry ended up on the wrong end of the stick that time around. By the way, John Kerry from Massachusetts, as was Michael Dukakis in 1988. I don't know what the deal is when it comes to Massachusetts, but they've not done well since 1960 when Jack Kennedy won the presidency at that time. Barack Obama, the winner, the 44th president of the United States, has won a second term. Let's check in with Sean Calebs now in Boston.
Yeah, Mike, behind me may be able to hear this crowd has just been re-energized in the past few minutes. Although everyone else is calling this race, it's clear that Mitt Romney is not going to concede at this moment. Behind me, you may be able to see the monitor. Fox News is on. They had Karl Rove on the air a short while ago. Of course, the strategist behind George W. Bush's 8 years in office. And Rove came on, told the nation, told anybody watching Fox that Ohio is not a done deal yet. Only 3/4 of the votes have been counted in that state, and it's still too early to concede. So that's the reason people here are cheering. It may be a very, very hollow victory at this point, continuing to drag out the race. By all indications, it's over. But Romney is not ready to concede. He is digging in his heels, still holding hopeful that somehow Ohio will turn toward him in the waning hours tonight, Mike.
You know what's interesting about this, Sean, is back in 2004, John Kerry also elected not to concede until the next morning. So this is not uncommon.
Well, I don't know about not uncommon. You know, it doesn't happen a whole lot of times when we get down to this, especially with the kind of magnifying glass we have with all the networks covering every nuance of these elections. But look, the bottom line is this has been a long campaign, 17 months. How many billions of dollars dragging this thing out, and Romney just clearly wants to make sure that the votes are in, as we say here in the United States, that the fat lady has sung. But you know, by all indications, it's over. You know, this may be enough to keep this crowd going for a while, but unless it turns dramatically, eventually Mitt Romney is going to have to come out and say, we gave it our best, but maybe the GOP can prevail in 2016.
Well, and this has to sting because his father also ran unsuccessfully in 1968, and there was a lot riding on this race. As you mentioned earlier in the evening, he campaigned in Ohio and Pennsylvania today, right up to the wire, obviously really pinning his hopes on that state, and it appears it didn't go his way.
Yeah, and just listen to this crowd behind me. They clearly want to keep on believing, and who can blame them? These are people who are, by their own words, totally invested in this candidate. Perhaps we didn't see that in 2008 with John McCain and Sarah Palin. But that's one thing that Romney was trying to do. We had a soundbite from him, or a quote from Mitt Romney earlier tonight, where he talked about how effective his campaign had been, how they had gotten 34,000 grassroots volunteers out, making sure people got to the poll. Look, this is a close race. He is still winning the popular vote, and that's significant. And it's probably confusing to a lot of people internationally. How can a candidate win the popular vote yet lose the race? Well, we of course have the Electoral College we've gone through. That is the institution which chooses the President of the United States. It's the way it's always been done here, a very strong federalist entity, and it's the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future. But Romney is clearly hanging on. He is a fighter. He is someone who dragged the Olympic Games out of the ashes. He's someone who people had said he couldn't get this far, and he's done it. So will he get further? Have to wait and see, but a lot of people say you gave it your best. All
right, well, they've certainly counted him out before. There's no doubt about it. Sean Caleb's for us in Boston. We've got international reaction coming up in just a bit. All right, let's take a look at the map. Obviously, Ohio, the critical state, and as you can see, we have Barack Obama with 275 electoral votes. This was the race to 270. He's obviously accomplished that, and as we said much earlier this evening, Alan Lichtman was here and suggested that Ohio would go to Barack Obama. He called it right. Let's go back to Jessica in Illinois, and she has been watching the pandemonium as it's been breaking out all evening long there, and especially of late.
And interestingly, Mike, I think that something in the crowd that caught my eye really takes a historical turn. We saw a couple of people holding up a sign that said, "We will overcome." And that just reminds you of the civil rights movement, of the unprecedented nature of this president winning the first time and then winning a second time in this country, the first African-American president to be elected and now re-elected president of the United States. A really tremendous accomplishment and something that he could not have done without such an excellently executed ground game, getting people out to the polls, owning the early votes. The Democrats were ahead in almost all of the states, going into today in early voting. And so we're seeing a trend where people getting a chance to vote early has really helped this president win again tonight.
Jessica, have you had a chance to talk to the folks there about what they see as a turning point in this campaign? Was there one? Obviously, the president had lost a lot of momentum after that first debate, but he tended to bounce back.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to talk to anybody just yet down here, and many of these people won't have that level of insight. But what I can say is that in many cases, people believe that any momentum that Mitt Romney had went away with the storm and the coverage of Sandy. This was an opportunity where the president could look presidential. Even as we watched him campaign, we were also getting regular updates. We know that the president was on the phone with all of the governors concerned, that he was regularly deploying people from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Department of Homeland Security, and others. And even now is working on preparing the Northeast coast for the nor'easter that will essentially hit the same victims of Sandy. Mike?
All right, Jessica Stone in Chicago, Illinois. Let's check back in with Elaine Reyes and get some international reaction to Barack Obama's victory. Elaine.
That's right. Obviously here at the White House, as we've been reporting, people here are jubilant, running from all directions to celebrate in front of the north side of the White House. But we want to check in with our correspondents around the globe. We first want to go to Beijing, where my colleague Zoe Yue is standing by live. And what do you anticipate the reaction will be now as China prepares to get its 18th CPC National Congress underway here in the next day or so? We'll check back with Zoe in just a little bit, but let's send it back to Chicago, where Jess is standing by, obviously waiting for the president to come out and speak to everyone. Okay, we'll check in with Frank Contreras, who is standing by live in Mexico City. Frank, what do you think the reaction will be when the people of Mexico wake up in the morning, if they're not paying attention already?
Well, it'll be all over the front pages of Mexican daily newspapers here, Elaine, across the country. Many people, as I said, are watching this race. People here have family members back in the United States. Hundreds of thousands of people have migrated over the decades here, and so people have a very close tie. A large majority of Mexicans probably aren't watching it. They'll see it in the headlines tomorrow and get on with their business, but they know that anything that happens in the United States has a tremendous impact here, and so they're going to be watching very closely. Also, Elaine, Mexicans are watching some particular issues that are being debated in 3 states, Washington State, Oregon, and Colorado State, especially that.
Okay, we'll try to get Frank back later on in our newscast, but let's head over to Europe, where Richard Bestick is standing by live in London. Richard, the UK is one of America's closest allies. How do you anticipate the reaction will be there as Europeans wake up this morning?
Well, I think it's the early hours in Europe. When they wake up in a couple of hours' time, it will be welcomed across Europe, and particularly here in London. The reasons, the continuity of policy that you'll see as Europe and the United States both struggle to get out of recession and the downturn that we've seen over the last 4 years in the economy, particularly in Europe. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is based in Washington. They've been working with the European Union and the White House. We will see a continuation of that rather than a policy veering off as it would have done under the challenger to Barack Obama. And then, of course, once they've taken on board the news and welcomed it, there will be that flood of calls to the White House congratulating Barack Obama from the leaders of the European Union. And one more thing, Elaine, they'll be watching too in the political parties across Europe for the tricks that they can learn from the successful Barack Obama election campaign. What won it for him, they'll hope, will win it in elections in Europe in the months and years ahead.
That's right. We are. Let's take a live look now at New York City, where folks there are reacting to news of Barack Obama's re-election. The crowds gathering, cheering there as well, just like they are here in Washington, D.C., as word spreads that Barack Obama has won a second term in office, coming just after 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, after the state of Ohio was called. Now, Richard, you know, most of Europe, in several different surveys, preferred Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney. And not only are they collaborating on things going on with financial matters, but in foreign policy matters as well, with regards to Iran and even Syria.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are no swing states anywhere near the European Union. Here in London, of course, was one of Mitt Romney's early political gaffes in the campaign, when he came to London during the Olympics and started criticising the organisation and saying it was all going to be a disaster. And the poor old local Prime Minister, David Cameron, had to come out and say, no, it won't, it'll be fine. But he upset a lot of feelings. And of course, in France, the complete antithesis to the policies being advocated by Mitt Romney, despite the fact that he was a Mormon missionary there for 2 years after he left university. And Germany, seen in the United States as the capital of Europe, if you like, the economic driving force, well, they will be pleased to see the Barack Obama administration getting back down to business and working with Europe to overcome the financial problems that beset both continents.
Okay, Richard Bestick reporting live from London. Thank you so very much. Let's send it back to our Washington studio, where Anand Naidoo is going to take a closer look at the international reaction to Obama's re-election.
Thanks, Elaine. And I have in the studio with me still Laura Carlson, who's Director of the Americas Program at the Center for International Policy, and Doug Paul, who's from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Laura, your response first.
Well, I think that around the world overall there was a lot of support for Barack Obama. So people are probably feeling relieved in some senses, the majority. Now the big question is, will there be a difference between re-election Obama and legacy Obama? Will he take more bold stances in many of the reasons? And particularly, will he look toward what he pronounced at the Summit of the Americas, for example, relationships of mutual respect and greater equality in his policies in the future in his second administration?
Doug, to a certain extent, Laura is right there, because we've seen a Barack Obama in the first term as a president who's been very cautious. He's looked at more times for agreement rather than confrontation, hasn't he?
Well, after a presidency under George W. Bush that got us into 2 wars that were not popular with the American people, you would expect that from President Obama. I think that this election is going to come as a great relief in Beijing, where party members are gathering for the party Congress. Had Romney been elected, there would have been a kind of electricity through that meeting, because they would have sensed that he was going to get off to a very rough start with China. That anxiety is replaced by relief, I believe. And China can go back to focus what it wants to focus on, which is Chinese problems.
Right, do you think the feeling in China would be that, look, we have our differences with Washington, but here's a man who's now been re-elected that we can do business with?
Well, they've done business with him, and so they will continue to do business with him. The game now becomes who gets what job. Wang Qishan is moving to a new position. He had dealt closely with Geithner. Geithner will be leaving Treasury. Hillary Clinton will be leaving State. And this kind of game is much less portentous. It's about how can you improve your personal relationships and make policy better, as opposed to go from a very reasonably friendly approach from the Obama administration with tones of toughness to a very much more tough message from Romney.
Right. Laura, those bold moves that you talked about, where will we see them, especially where it concerns Latin America?
Well, in Latin America, it would be backing down a little bit on this very militaristic kind of national security emphasis that's really a carryover from the Bush administration, where much of foreign policy in the region, and it's not the only region, has been really led by the Pentagon. Going back toward the more diplomatic views, the more, as I said, equal partnerships that he announced at the beginning of his presidency, and then unfortunately kind of fell away in the wake of the expansion of the drug war and other military forms of expansion in the region.
Okay, well, thanks to both of you. For now, let's send it to Phil.
All right, Anand, thank you very much. You know, one of the biggest topics of this election was the jobs, the economy. Stephen Roach is back with us from Yale University. By the way, you have a fabulous finance background as the chairman of Morgan Stanley in Asia. I want to get your thoughts as to what kind of impact, or maybe a better way to put it is, what does Obama do tomorrow morning as he looks at his agenda and he looks at the economy? What's he going to do now?
He's got to put the spin books away, Phil, and really do a gut check on what it's going to take to get the economy going. He's been talking up the economy, as any incumbent would do, and I don't blame him for that at all. But it's a tough economy. It's growing anemically. The unemployment rate is too high, and we've got this fiscal cliff right around the corner. And the president's, he's been on the campaign trail. He has not been attentive to these issues. He's got to face them tomorrow morning.
2 things. Let's start with, if the president called upon you and said, what is your advice as to the #1 issue that he needs to take care of?
It's jobs, and the reason that it's jobs is because the American consumer, 70% of the economy, isn't growing because they've got too much debt and they don't have enough saving, and you've got to address those issues.
But how to create those jobs? Because no one's against jobs. No one's ever against creating jobs.
No, we want jobs, but jobs don't come out of thin air. Companies hire when they actually believe that there's going to be a need for more workers in the future, when their markets are going to expand. That takes demand, and consumers are not in a position to deliver that demand.
The second point you brought up was the fiscal cliff. I mean, this is an extremely important issue to both Democrats and Republicans, and there was some talk that if the president were to get reelected, which it appears to be so now, that Republicans perhaps might take a softer approach on the fiscal cliff. Just for our viewers around the world, the fiscal cliff is the automatic spending cuts of $600 billion or more that would automatically take place without a deal.
Plus the tax increase.
Plus the tax increase.
Right.
Now, what do we do about the fiscal cliff going forward now?
It's going to be tough because the Congress is still polarized ideologically. And we need a president who can bring that polarization to an end. And we'll see if he's got the right stuff to do that. That's something that has not occurred yet, and it's easy to point the finger at the other side and say they don't give, and the other side points the finger at him and says he doesn't give. But if that's the way we go through the end of the year, then we're going to go back into recession.
All right, Mike, there you have it. It's still the jobs and, of course, the fiscal cliff.
All right, Phillip, thanks so much. We're bringing back in Alan Lichtman, but first, before we do that, let's look at the numbers out of Ohio. Right now, it is tied at 49 to 49%, and I guess this is the reason why Mitt Romney is choosing not to concede at this stage, although it has been called. And I guess the key right now, as you see it, is really up here in northern Ohio, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't blame Mitt Romney for not conceding. Wait till the votes are counted, you know. We remember the fiasco of 2000, right? It's fresh in our mind. But most of the votes that are yet to be counted in Ohio are from the heavily Democratic areas in northern Ohio, particularly the city of Cleveland. That's why all those gurus at the network called it. And remember, I called it 2 hours ago for Barack Obama and called the election 2 hours ago for Obama.
We had a heart attack when you did it, but
I'm sure
thankfully
you did,
were
but
right.
you survived.
And you see Colorado and Nevada probably ending up in Obama's column as well this evening.
Absolutely, and if that's the case, then Ohio doesn't even matter, because Nevada, as I pointed out before, those two states also put him over 270 electoral college votes. And right now, after trailing all night in Virginia, Obama's creeped into a tiny lead in Virginia, and he's been hanging on to a lead in Florida. So he could conceivably sweep all of the remaining undecided states. I'm not predicting that, and it's not necessary for him to do that, but I'm pretty certain he's going to win Nevada and Colorado.
Well, let's just go ahead and change that to blue, because that's what we're hearing as well, that Nevada has gone in his direction.
That's right, and I think Colorado will too.
Alaska's notoriously red, so we can probably count that. Let me ask you about Romney's choice not to concede at this point. I mentioned in 2004, John Kerry as well, also from Massachusetts, decided the next day. I was in Nashville in 2000 when Gore said, we're continuing the fight, and that one went on and on and on. What do you see happening with this one?
This is not a 2000. 2000, it came down to one state, and the votes were way too close in the state of Florida that Bush wound up winning by 537 votes out of 6 million cast. As I said, I believe that Obama is going to win Colorado, and that's going to put him in a very safe electoral college zone. Even if something absolutely strange happened in Ohio, he's still over 270, and he could well win either Virginia or Florida or both. So I do not see this as a 2000. I also believe that Obama will win the popular vote, even though he's slightly behind now. Look at the big state that is yet to be counted, California. Obama's going to win California by a huge margin, and that alone will give him a majority or plurality of the popular vote.
One more quick question, then we want to go back to Jessica in Illinois. What are the words that need to come out of the president's mouth? This is a really split country in many respects. What can he say to try and bring people together?
I think he's got to talk about the theme that he was elected on in the first place and elected on again, and that is to try to transcend the partisanship in Washington, to try somehow to find common ground between Republicans and Democrats. He's going to have to do that because he doesn't have the House. The House is staying Republican. He's going to have to call on what I think has been missing throughout his presidency, the kind of soaring rhetoric we saw in the 2008 campaign. My advice to Obama is take every consultant, every handler, every pollster, and every huckster that works for you and send them off to a very nice Pacific island far, far away and be yourself, because the consultants kill you.
All right, you heard it here first. Let's check back in with Jessica Stone. She is in Chicago, Illinois, where the party continues. Jessica, that looks more subdued now, though.
I'm sorry?
It looks a little bit more subdued, though.
Well, I think they're just waiting for the guest of honor tonight, who's expected in the next 10 or 15 minutes, the President of the United States on his way to make his acceptance speech, his victory speech, which is something that everyone here has been waiting for all evening. We're just trying to keep the crowd whipped up and watching as they are whipped up in time to hear what he has to say tonight. He's had a lot of heartfelt words on the campaign trail, particularly in Iowa, which gave him his start in the primary season 5 years ago. And I know there will be a lot of personal thank yous tonight.
There was a funny story actually in the Washington Post today about when he was running the first time, how he was on the phone calling people, and he called a girl who was working on her yearbook in high school, and she said, give me your number, I'll call you back. That kind of shows you how far he's come in a short period of time.
Absolutely, and he has a lot of really touching anecdotes with people he's met along the way. The one he told in Iowa concerns the woman who taught him the phrase, fired up, ready to go. And so we expect to hear some of those tonight as the president accepts another 4-year term for his party, and really a sign that the economy is the top issue of many of the voters here in the United States.
All right, Jessica Stone, live for us in Illinois. We'll, of course, be back with her momentarily. We're going to continue to follow the party there, but let's go to Elaine Reyes. She's got more international reaction for us.
That's right. Thanks, Mike. Let's check in with my colleague in Beijing, Zoe, who is standing by live to give us a reaction from China, where it is almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon there. What can you tell us?
Yes, Elaine, well, obviously Obama has won this game. The official response hasn't come out yet, but the Chinese government has been consistent. It doesn't take sides of who wins the election. The conventional wisdom is that the Chinese government would prefer Republican Chairman Mao. When he met President Nixon, he said he prefer the right because they speak the way they think. But of course, Romney is no conventional Republican. He's shape-shifting all the time, and he promised to be tougher on China. Of course, Obama is a known figure here. We know his China policy. His China's policy basically sound good and look good, but he has been shifting assets to this part of the world, not willing to make room for the growth of China. But of course, the big picture is that China and the U.S. have to work together, and nobody can afford to go real confrontational. Elaine.
Well, the 18th CPC National Congress will be getting underway there. Do you anticipate anything from the new leaders coming up, what they may say about Barack Obama and how maybe they will be working with him?
Of course, the party's Congress will be held in about 2 days. They're going to elect a new leader of the Chinese Communist Party. Many people are saying that the new leadership will probably strike a good relations with President Obama. Now Mr. Xi Jinping has been visiting foreign countries for over 50 times, and he visited Washington, D.C. this February, and also Biden visited China last year. They have a very good and cordial relationship. I think the new leadership of the Chinese will have a good cooperative relations with President Obama.
And President Obama, regardless of whether he won or lost tonight, is scheduled to visit the Asia region in the next week or two later on this month in November. Do you think that some of the Asian nations may be trying to make some headway with him or continue on a relationship with some of the things that have been happening there amongst the different countries, like the South China Sea and those sort of issues?
Of course, this has been the consistent policy of President Obama's administration of rebalancing to Asia, striking good relationship with Southeast Asian nations. China has been watching this with caution. Of course, China understands that America wants to make its presence felt in this part of the world, and China is ready to cope with that. The problem is, the big picture is China and the U.S., the economy are so closely linked, and any security fiasco in this part of the world will not be taken seriously and will not be in the interest of either country. Elaine.
Okay, Zoe, thank you so much for your perspective from Beijing. Let's send it back to our Washington studio with Anand.
Thanks, Elaine. And in the studio with me, I still have Sabrina Schaefer, Republican strategist, and Richard Fowler, who's the Democratic strategist. First, Sabrina, your response, your reaction.
Well, it's a disappointing evening for the Republicans, but absolutely now the goal is going to have to be to move forward, because we still have a soaring debt, we still have high unemployment, we still have entitlement programs that are falling apart, we still have a healthcare system that is wildly unpopular and needs to be repealed and replaced. There is so much work to be done, and the fact that the American people just voted for 4 more years of this, it does surprise me, and it just suggests that Democrats have a fantastic ground game.
Okay, Richard, the battle goes on.
Not surprised at all. I think it's a great day for the president, a great day for the American people. And beyond that, everybody, all these Republican governors put rules in to stop the people from voting. But tonight, the people spoke, and they spoke loud and clear and reelected Obama for 4 more years.
Well, I want to ask you about that, because it does not look as if Barack Obama has, at this stage, got the popular vote.
But he will.
Yeah, it looks like he probably will. And the idea that people were somehow not able to get to the polls, and we saw lines that were around the block.
Governors trying to pass laws.
Yeah, now we're really grasping
We won
straws.
tonight, and that's all that matters.
I was going to say.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us. Let's get back to Mike.
Well, we're looking at the Washington Monument. You see the fireworks in the background as the celebrations continue here in Washington, D.C., as President Barack Obama wins a 2nd term in office. It was a hard-fought campaign that came down to the wire. There were a lot of questions about how close this one was going to be. And, of course, Ohio was the key state tonight, putting him over the top. Just a short time ago, he ends up with 274 electoral votes. Mitt Romney at this stage with just 203. Let's take another look at the popular vote, and you can see how close this race really is. With Obama winning, but right now the popular vote sitting at 49% to 49%. That is how close this race has been all night long. It has been seesawing back and forth, and as you can see, 65% of the precincts reporting. But as Alan Lichtman pointed out earlier, a lot of those votes in California have still not been counted, and he believes that Barack Obama will also win the popular vote as well. So that's going to do it for our coverage here this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll tell you what, we're going to go to Beijing, where they're going to continue to cover this story. Once again, just in closing, Barack Obama, the 44th president of the United States, has won another 4-year term in office, and he will have his victory speech, we imagine, shortly in Illinois. Now to Beijing.